I'm at that fun age of 29 where you question your youth's sanity and get the sudden urge to sort out the cupboards, as it makes me feel like I'm getting my life together. But the overall self-reflective conclusion of the year is as follows. Drumroll please. I'm more fragile in some areas than I thought, but as a whole, stronger than I previously believed. I'm actually quite easily influenced, but this can be used to my advantage if I wanted to. I tie productivity and output way too much to my personality and self-worth, but I'm finally coming to be at peace with that. I seem to have no original experiences, despite for most of my life feeling like I'm the only one that thinks like I do. And finally, my mind is a rollercoaster, and a bit nuts, but very few humans aren't, and that's okay. But Amy, you may say, what are you yapping on about? Where is this video going? To which I respond, fear not, people of YouTube. A video intro is coming. Cue the dramatic music. In this video, I set out to become the next great philosopher of our time, looking at why some of us can't sit still for 2 seconds and see life's purpose as work or you'll feel like shite, whilst others see reaching for the TV remote as a total trek. Or if you're like me, you experience both of these, depending on which one of your personalities would like to come out and say hi. But overall, despite our differences, why we are way more alike than we think, and all a bit, mad. If you're new here, I'm Amy Claire, and on this channel I try to understand human nature, philosophy and life stories to help me make sense of life and how we all get to where we are. This year using more self-deprecating humour. Progress, right? So let's talk about these personalities that seem to be playing musical chairs in our brains. You know that person who turns making a to-do list into Olympic sport? That's your type A personality in full force. First identified by cardiologists Friedman and Roseman in the 1950s when they noticed that their waiting room chairs were weirdly worn out only on the edges. Turns out some patients were literally sitting on the edge of their seats, ready to spring into action. Classic type A behaviour. But here's where it gets interesting. These researchers weren't just furniture enthusiasts with a weird chair obsession. They discovered that this constant state of go, go, go was literally affecting people's hearts. And not in the romantic way. More in the maybe take a breath before you organise your wardrobe by colour, texture and length kind of way. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, but Amy, sometimes I'm that person colour coding their calendar and other times I can barely remember what day it is. Congratulations, you've just discovered what psychologist Karen Horney would call the complexity of human adaptation. She found that these personality types aren't permanent residents in our brain, but more like a friend who crashes on the couch. Sometimes they overstay their welcome, but they can be asked to leave. This may be different for Elon Musk's brain, but that's for another video. Nonetheless, this is where my James McAvoy reference starts making even more sense. Just like Patricia might pop out for a quick organisational spree and split, many of us switch between these modes depending on what life throws at us. Modern research actually shows that this flexibility, the ability to channel different parts of a personality, can be a superpower. Well, I certainly hope so, or else I'm screwed. But here's the thing, that productivity paradox I mentioned, it's like being stuck in a toxic relationship with our to-do lists. Economists like Robert Solow noticed something weird. Despite all of our productivity tools, time management apps, and the new notebook that you just bought that was definitely going to change your life, we're not actually getting more done. We're just getting more stressed out about not getting more done. So why do so many of us fall into these same patterns? Why did I spend years thinking that I was the only one having an existential crisis, spending more time organising my Spotify shower playlist than actually showering? Only to discover that it's practically a generational hobby at this point. Here's where neuroscience gets delightfully weird. Researchers like Yuri Hansen at Princeton discovered something called brain-to-brain synchronization. Basically, when we share experiences, our brains light up in very similar patterns. It's like we're all running on the same software, but on slightly different hardware. And those unique thoughts that we're having, there's a good chance that thousands of others are having them at the exact same time. I've mentioned the default mode network in previous videos. It's this network in our brains that kicks in when we're not actively focused on anything, basically our mental autopilot. It looks remarkably similar across almost everyone. So, when I'm lying in bed catastrophizing about the fact that crying in the club was my skill 10 years ago, there's probably someone else in your time zone doing the exact same thing. This is where philosophers like Nagel would jump in with his favourite party trick question. What is it like to be a bat? His point was about consciousness and shared experience. We might never know what it's like to be a bat, but we're surprisingly good at understanding what it's like to be another human, because fundamentally we're running on very similar neural hardware. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, the idea that we're all drawing from the same pool of human experience. Sure, we might dress it up differently. My crisis might involve reorganising my makeup drawer, whilst yours involves making spreadsheets about spreadsheets. But underneath, we're all dealing with the same basic human stuff. So next time you're feeling like you are the only one that can't get their life together, remember this. Those unique anxieties you're having, they're so common that scientists can literally map them in a lab. The weird thing you do when you're stressed, Stop doing that. I joke, but there is probably a support group for it. That feeling that you get that somehow you're doing life wrong while everyone else has just got it figured out, that might be one of the most universal experiences. And that brings me back to where I started. Me at 29, thinking I've cracked some unique code by realising that organising my cupboards doesn't actually solve my existential crisis. But here's what the science and philosophy actually teaches us. Our brains are basically running on the same operating system with slightly different apps installed. Those type A moments where we're colour coding our calendar for the next decade, that's just one program running. Those type B days where reaching for the remote feels like an absolute marathon, that's another one. But we're not actually faulty when we switch between them, we're just human beings working as intended, I guess. Although it sure feels like something ain't right up there at times. The real plot twist in all of this is that we're not as unique as we think. And it's this very realisation that what makes us feel less alone. When I started the podcast, I thought everyone would feel so different to me, as we all have different backgrounds. But it turns out other people have the exact same thoughts, just with different Netflix shows playing in the background essentially. So here's what I've learned this year. It's okay that my productivity doesn't define my worth, even though my type A personality strongly disagrees. It's fine that sometimes I feel like I'm playing with different characters in my own life. Turns out we all have our own internal James McAvoy moments going on. And most importantly, it's actually comforting to know that when I'm lying awake at night wondering if I'm doing the whole life thing right, there's probably millions of others doing the same thing. Now, if you are watching this thinking, yeah, that actually really speaks to me, well, congratulations, your brain is probably lighting up in the exact same pattern as mine right now. If you've enjoyed this existential crisis wrapped up in psychological research and questionable humour, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below what flavour of human chaos you are, type A, type B, or somewhere in between. Until next time, this is Amy Claire, still trying to figure it out, just with more scientific backing and slightly better organised cupboards.